my family was very arty in a sense. My mother was a school teacher and my father worked in the prisons department, not a uniformed officer, but he was in charge of the stores. So, but my mother played piano and violin and sang, and then my brothers, two brothers above me, we all learned piano, and then one brother had a rock pop band in JB, and we entered talent times and we won prizes, and my brother's band played for all kinds of things. This was all in the bustling metropolis of Johor Bahru. Yeah, so we had and then it was a lot of singing and dancing in the house, like when visitors came, it's like, yeah, so my childhood was quite happy and storybook, play in the drains, floods in JB and all that kind of thing, and then school, primary school in convent, and then secondary school also in convent, and then Form 6 in, at that time, what was known as English College, and then the name changed to Maktab Sultan Abu Bakar. And then, yeah, so that was childhood really. But the story of how I got specifically into dance is an interesting story. I was very thin and kind of hunched over, and my mother was concerned about it. So she asked a doctor friend of hers, look at this child, she's like, hunched over. And the doctor said, oh, just send her for dance classes and she'll be fine. The rest is actually history. But, my mom took me to Bharatanatyam classes that were happening in a club, sort of very near the house. I might have been about 5, I think. And I looked at it and I went, oh, this is too difficult work, okay. So then, and I was the youngest of the 3. So then she waited until I started school and gained a bit of, I guess, confidence. And then school at that time was a lot of song and dance. I mean, in Standard 1, we had a nun called Sister Stevens who did the whole of Swan Lake. In Standard 1, I was 6 years old and I was a swan. If you look at the photos, I look more like an ugly duckling, but never mind. So we did that. Then I started doing ballet. So ballet from the age of about 8 to 16. First with a teacher called Francis Yeo, and then when he closed his school down he went over to UK, he handed over the whole school to this British lady of Russian descent, I think, Mrs. Cecilia Lustig, who had the Johor Ballet School. So it was the first sort of ballet school. Well, Francis Yeo, I guess, was the first. Yeah, so then I did ballet there, and then I just carried on dancing. So, I often say I didn't choose dance, dance chose me. Because, I didn't as a child say, oh, I want to go and learn dance classes, but, my mother's idea of straightening me up, and then I just carried on doing it. And then, yeah, when I was 17, I went to the US on a student exchange program. That was quite a turning point because, from Johor Bahru to LA, a small town east of LA, but it was quite a shock. America was a shock for a Catholic Malayali girl from small town Johor Bahru. It's like, oh dear. But I was in a school, Claremont High School, which had a very interesting system, and there was dance was quite an important subject. So then I was doing the subject, and then because I was this exchange student, so I was teaching Malay dance to these high school kids and so on and so forth. Because I had started learning Malay dance in school, in the school clubs and things like that. So then, I started feeling, oh, this might be something that I want to do. Then I went back and I did my Form 6, and my father wanted me to either go into teaching, like my mom, or go into law, because I cakap banyak lah. So at that time, USM had opened in Penang, Universiti Sains Malaysia, and they had opened the first performing arts program. I think they opened in 71. I was going in 74. So, it was just the thing, it was perfect. So I went in to do performing arts. And my mother was very supportive. My father was worried, like, what was I going to do with this performing arts degree? So I promised him that I would do my master's, as soon as I finished my first degree, so that I would have something that I could teach in a university. And he passed away at the end of my first year in university. So I finished my degree and I went on immediately and did my master's, to keep that promise, yeah. And he was right, because I'm teaching in universities. I've been teaching in different universities for the longest time, yeah. Growing up as a child, definitely my parents, my mother especially, and then my brothers, because of all the music that was happening in the house. And then my early dance teachers, Sister Stevens, who did Swan Lake, Frances Yeo, and Mrs. Lustig. And Mrs. Lustig, when you reach the 6th grade, called elementary in ballet, there's one section, so you do all your technique and everything. Examiners were coming from the UK. And there's one section of improv where they just play music, and then you listen to it once, and then they play it again, and you just are supposed to dance, make up your own steps and everything. And I remember she said to me, you should go into choreography, at the age of 16. And it's something that kind of stuck with me, what even does that mean, and I went into choreography. Not at that time, no, not as a child, and not even in my first trip to the US. But when I went back to the US in '80, I actually went and studied at the Graham School. And I studied Graham technique. I studied in different schools and did choreography. But I think my next sort of phase of influence, besides that year as an exchange student, which was quite kind of life-changing, USM was completely life-changing, completely. Because USM in the 70s, post-69, the kind of questions that were being discussed in university, what does it mean to be Malaysian, what does it mean to be Malay, what does it mean to be non-Malay, claim your culture, claim your nation. And USM really made it possible, because in USM we had traditional dance being taught, we had wayang kulit being taught. It was the first time a dalang was coming from Kelantan to teach in USM, and that group of us were the first sort of non-Kelantanese, non-Malay, female and male learning wayang kulit. And one of my girlfriends and me, Angie and me, we were the first non-Malay, non-Kelantanese, female student dalangs in the history of wayang kulit in this country. It was terrifying. It was terrifying, doing this puppeteers and puppetry and everything. It was just very, very scary. But the dalang was, I think that's the first time I felt, in retrospect, here's somebody who's really wise. When do you use the word wise, Yeah, because of the stories he would tell. So my influences in USM, the dance teacher in the performing arts department, he's Prof. Muhammad Gaus Nasaruddin. He at that time was already doing like really interesting work, contemporary work, using a lot of traditional material. He was choreographing things like, you could do joget and then go into a ballet thing, which of course now if you look back and you go, oh, but aesthetically this doesn't work or whatever. But at that time it was like, oh, you can do this, you don't have to keep things, And that really started me on a journey of contemporary dance. And so I had very good teachers in USM, not just in the performing arts. So there was Gauss, there was Roger Long, there was Ed Frame, all performing arts. And then there were the socio-political types like Lim Tek Gi and Khoo Kek Jin and Kasim Ahmad, all these legendaries, Chandra Muzaffar. these were, our teachers of elective courses and things, and USM at that time, and then the friendships that happened. So it just changed my mind, my perspectives on Malaysia, and it started my journey on looking at art and the possibilities of art and dance and what was its role, and all that thinking started between 74 and 79 in USM. It started there. Absolutely. And I think the 70s in other universities as well, UM and all, was really a place of a lot of new ideas and thinking because of what had happened in 69. What had happened in 69 really shocked. We were still young, but shocked the intellectuals, and the academics, to look at, oh my God, we've been thinking of ourselves as a nation, multiracial, multi-religious, multilingual, living in peace and harmony. Uh-oh, that's not true. If you looked at the river in the middle of KL on 13th May 1969, the bloody river, So these stories and all were quite shocking, yeah. I think it probably started at that point, but when I started my work, I didn't go straight into that. So I finished USM, and then I came to KL, and then I was working in KL for a while. And I felt I'd had so many gurus, and I was already starting on this journey of choreography as well as dancing. And I felt I needed to sort of go out of the shadow of my gurus to find my voice as a choreographer. And so I went to New York. I took a lot of classes. I took choreography classes. I worked, I waitressed, I babysat, I cleaned houses. Nothing so unusual lah. The typical artist goes to New York and survives kind of thing. Survived, taught dance, then got into some interesting projects, cross-cultural projects, cross-cultural Raman Sita project and other things, choreographed for Shakespeare in the Park. And yeah, did these sort of strange opportunities, I was very lucky. And at that time, I was looking at form. I was asking myself the question, what is contemporary dance in Malaysia? Surely we cannot just follow the ballet track or the Western track. And then there's traditional. I'd learned a lot of traditional by that time. I had learned Malay dance, I'd learned classical Malay dance, I'd learned Bharatanatyam. So then, looking at what was in my body and in my kinesthetic memory, the most obvious was, I'm going to try and fuse these two, East and West, tradition and modernity. So my first show actually, was all about form. I was looking at form, and I was not really interested in the story or the narrative or the theme and all. But then, yeah, so that was my first and my second shows, I think. But then soon after that, then you're working, and I was part-time teaching, and you're looking at things that are happening. Then I started, yes, on that kind of socio-political commentary. And again, the first few works, like in 1988, were very women-centered. The journey of a woman, the struggles of a woman. So people look and analyze the work and say, it's very feminist work. But at that point, I was not. Yeah, I'm a feminist. So then after that, as I became more politicized as a human being, by my interactions with people, by what was happening in the country, then the work started getting more and more political, not just about women, but about the state of the nation, or, different kinds of issues. So, my work has been really strange, even if I do say so myself, in terms of the journey. So there was form, then there was women, then there was issues, women plus other issues. And then suddenly I started thinking about things like so I started my first show. I started choreographing serious work in New York, which I performed in New York, and then I came back. So 81 was my first solo show. Then by 90s, I was collaborating with people and doing stuff. Then suddenly in 2013, I decided, oh, everybody has shorter spans of focus and attention. It was the handphone. The minute the message comes in, you have to answer all these things. So I moved back in a sense to form, but I also took myself out of the equation. And this is all now in retrospect, but at that time, oh, what if I do this? So I made something called 2-minute solos. We had a space in Taman Tun. So we picked 11 spaces: the offices, the lobby, the stairs, the kitchen thing. And then I chose 11 people, quite carefully chose. I had June Tan as a producer who would sit with me and I told her about the idea and then she loved it. And then I let it go and she was the one who would tell me, Marion, let's do it. Okay. So, and there was somebody else who was the producer, Sunita. Anyway, um, so then we very sort of carefully picked a range of people. Some people I knew very well, some people I didn't know well, and some people I really didn't know. And then they drew lots, and they each had a space. And all I did was give them the form. So the form was, you have to make a 2-minute solo piece. You have to be able to repeat it many, 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 many times. So if your solo is just that you're jumping for 2 minutes, be careful lah, because you have to repeat many times. And that was it. I was not going to direct. As far as possible, I was not going to censor unless it was extremely objectionable or which I never even said. We didn't talk about it. And if you want to just show a film or something that you made on video or something, you still have to be physically in the room. The person, that was the only rule. So then audience would come in and be divided into groups of 4, and a gong. So the audience would go into 4 people in each of the 11 spaces, so 44 people. Then a gong would go, and then you do their 2-minute solo, and then after 2 minutes the gong would go, and they move to the next space. So it's round robin, and then the next group comes in and you repeat your solo 11 times. And it just was such an odd project, but also really fantastic. Some people felt it was very voyeuristic because you're going into the office, say the 5 hours office, like where you were sitting just now, and our files are there, and and somebody said, I'm surprised you didn't lock all your files away. And I thought, you're going to open my file and look at it, it's fine. What can you do in 2 minutes, and then it was hot, we had to bring in fans, and it was uncomfortable. But after 2 minutes, even if you're bored and you hate the piece, you're on to something else. So, and by the time it was opening night, I was unemployed. You know what I mean? Because, what I mean is, as a dancer, every night you have to perform, and then as a choreographer, even if you're not performing, you have to look at the show, and then the next day you have to give notes. Okay, the energy was no good here, it was too slow here. But this is it. I was free. It's yours now. I'm not directing. I'm not telling you fast, slow, anything. It's yours. So for me also, it was about, what if I democratize the creative space and just bring people. So yeah, so I was back to form, at that time. And then we repeated the thing in DPAC, the Damansara Performing Arts Center, the following year. So yeah, so the work keeps sort of changing. when Mark Tay did in 2008, he did something called the Emergency Project, where it was all about what happened during the emergency. And he asked me to do something. And what I did was I read the names, what I could get, of people who had been arrested under ISA. And I just read. And there was a film of Yang Bansi, which is the Chinese propaganda dances, which the Communist Party also at those days used to follow these very revolutionary style dances. And there was one dancer who was improvising in the space. So she would improvise either by what she saw on the film or what she heard, So I would say, Lim Ah Cow, vegetable seller, arrested at 2 a.m. in his house. So if vegetable hit her, then she would go, lelong, lelong, kangkong, kangkong, whatever, and like that. And we rehearsed it, but each time it would be different. And there were like 800 names to read. So when I started, I said, I'm committed to read all these names of people who've been arrested under ISA. And I invite you to please come and read with me. So I would start reading, and I had the stack of papers, and then audience would come and pick a paper and start reading from wherever they were sitting, at which point I would move away from the microphone. So then you heard these voices, and these names being just thrown into the space, and it became like a ritual, a ritual of remembrance of these people who were arrested, who were in for X number of years, who are out, who some have passed on, all these things. And yeah, it was very strange. And it would go on maybe for as long as all the names were read. So maybe about, an hour or a little bit more. But I remember, when I would finish and then come out of the space, I would feel like I had been through some kind of thing. And I'd feel like really tired, physically and emotionally just drained. And physically, I did nothing. I just sit there and read. So, these kinds of, I haven't done a dancey work for a very long time. I had done a work in 2009 called Go Stand Forward, where I'm also telling stories, but not reading. But that was kind of a performed autobiography, stories of my work, and and that was directed by Mark Tay. So we made it in 2019, and we performed it on and off for 9 years, uh, till 2018 in various places: Japan, Singapore, Finland. Yeah. Um, so that idea of a performance lecture where it's me telling stories had already I, I I had already an experience with it. So then in 2019 I had cancer, and then mastectomy, and then chemo. So during chemo I was like in this chemo bubble, not seeing people. Then just as I finished chemo in February 2020, coming out of my chemo bubble, COVID. So lockdown. So of course, lockdown was home alone, and then for a while, nothing, no classes, and then online classes, and then having to learn all the technology, Zoom, everything. And I'm like, I'm old, I can't deal with this. But I dealt with it and all. So towards the end of that year, I was like, oh my God, this is just going to go on forever, this because we had lockdown, then we had open up, and then lockdown again. Yeah. So one day I just, without any plan, and this is the first time without a plan, without, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do a show, I'm going to, nothing. I opened the computer and I started typing the first story. In 2019, I had a mastectomy. In August 2019, I had a mastectomy of the left breast. Da 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 da. Then I looked at the story. It was quite a long story. Then I looked at the story and go, oh. Then I wrote the second story. Then I wrote, and I'm not a writer. I hate writing. I'm the only lecturer, and I'm not an academic, but I work in academia, who has published maybe five things in my lifetime. You know, Prof. Anis has published probably 500. Um, I hate writing. I'm not a writer. And here I was writing. So I said to myself, I better go and learn how to write. It's writing 101. So then I Googled, right? Writing 101. So they give you do this, you do this. You wake up every morning, and I go, I'm not going to do all those 10 things or 15 things. But I did one thing for 1 month. I went to the document every day. That was one of the things. You must go to the document every day. So I went to the document every day, and sometimes I would write, sometimes I would just stare, sometimes I would edit a bit. And and then I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I started adding numbers, and then I added an intro as it got to some stories which were a bit graphic in explanation, talking about body parts. So then I wrote introduction. Okay, some of this, might need censorship, because it's whatever, just to warn the reader. And then, because it was COVID time, we had many groups chat who were meeting online. We'll have a Zoom meeting just to chat. And so a friend of mine in Singapore, who is a writer, educator, and a dramaturg, and two directors in India and myself, we were on a little group. So one day we were on this group. So by now it's like I'd been writing for December, January, February, March, 4 months. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I go, yeah, I've been writing these stories. And then one of them says, oh, Marion, why don't you just read for us? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? So okay. So we set a time, and then the friend in Singapore, I said, oh, Charles, it's very important that people see the text. Because what I had started doing was what I call visual choreography. So I'm not in a studio, and I'm not doing my usual choreography, and I'm not doing my usual kinesthetic stuff. So I started doing things with the text. Everything was in small font. Some things, you know, no caps. Yeah, So when so for me, looking at the text was very important. Some things are scratched out. Some things are blacked out. Yeah, numbering. So I said, so she said, yeah, fine. Uh, she would make a PowerPoint of the text, put the text up. So then, people could either just read the text with me, or just look at me in a little window, or do whatever they want. So I did the first reading in March 2020 to these three people. And these two directors are very well-known senior directors in Delhi. And their reaction was like, oh my God, Marion, this is it's brilliant, it's this, the writing, the da da da. And I'm like, okay. And these are not people who would just say it to make me feel good, They would tell me the truth. So after I spoke to this girlfriend, Charlene, I go, Shah, then she says, yeah, Marion, there's something there. There's something there. So we started doing Zoom readings. Every few months, we would do Zoom readings just to friends. We'd invite 5 people. I think the biggest group was maybe 15. And over the 2 years, 21, 22, we did about 8, I think 8 to 10 Zoom readings. So a total of about 50 people, just small groups. And after the reading, there would be discussion, reaction, questions, whatever. So then, by which time I was talking to this friend of mine, Charlene, and she organically became like a dramaturg, asking me questions. And before each reading, we would have a meeting, and she would say, for this reading, why don't you imagine each story? Which person are you telling the story to? Things like that, which dramaturgs do. So the work sort of got honed and developed, and then we started thinking and talking, and then somebody in Singapore after reading wanted it to go to perform at the Singapore Festival, and I said, no, I don't even know what it is, But we decided between Charlene and I that it should move from Zoom to room. Yes, we're not sure what it is, but we have our own space here. and let's see what happens. So I felt, yeah, okay, the work is very personal and it's very vulnerable and it's kind of putting me out there, it's so personal. But this for me, I mean, Five Arts is a safe space as a family of people, and this space is also a safe space. So if I'm going to do it, this is where to do it because I know I'll be supported. So we moved from Zoom to Room, and then I got Sam. Sam had done some other work where he did very interesting graphics. So I spoke to him to come and do the multimedia. And we did it in December 23. 6 shows, packed. But as I said to you earlier on, it's not very difficult to pack the space. 50, 60 people, yeah, very good. We're sold out. But still, people came. People who knew me came. People who didn't know me came. And the reaction was very, very, very moving and positive. And it's so before that, people, my friends and all who were on the Zoom reading would say, how will it sit with people who don't know Marion? We know Marion. So when Marion is going to talk about her breasts or her vagina, we know La Marion's like that, she's no filter, yeah. Um, what about others, and what about people who don't know Marion and all? So we said, it's okay lah. We just put it out there. But people found it dark and disturbing and also very entertaining because some of it is very funny, like really funny. And I had reached a stage, but I was very careful with it. I'd reached a stage where I could laugh at certain things, but I didn't want to laugh at cancer. There's nothing to laugh at cancer. There's nothing to laugh about losing a breast. And I didn't want to be making fun of it. So I was quite careful on how that was treated. But I don't think anybody had problems like, I don't know what this is about, because everybody has a cancer story. Everybody has a cancer story. People would come up to me and go, oh my God, my mother had cancer, my grandmother had cancer, my sister has cancer. It's like everybody. 50% of people have a dementia story. Oh my God, my mother has dementia, my father has dementia. So it was so accessible. And it was so, I guess what people tell me is that it was so rare and scary that someone would just sit there and just talk about it and give you, somebody said the list of medicines is just so horrific if you just read it. But then because I was singing it like a Gregorian chant, like a Catholic hymn, yeah, so it was very accessible to those who knew Marion and those who did not know Marion. And so one of this review came out, right? And I thought what she said was very cute about how we know Marion the dancer. Marion the dancer is not dancing anymore because she's 70 years old, 71 now. And so Carmen says that, so when she danced, she said, I felt, yeah, I got my money's worth. Marion is dancing. And then I danced only for 2 minutes, and then why is it so short? Could it have been a little longer? Why was it not a little longer? But yet, how many times do we see a 70-year-old dancing, even if it's for 2 minutes, even if it's with the absence of the presence of her husband and yada, yada, yada. So that dancing for 2 minutes was for me also the most beautiful moment. It's painful, but it's also beautiful. So there were many things like that. Sort of. When I teach choreography, I tell my students, your piece must have at least one magic moment. One magic moment, whether it's a 1-hour piece or a 3-minute piece, where your audience goes, and they go home with that magic moment. If your piece has more than one magic moment, you're home free, And so my students who saw the piece, saw the show, said to me after that, "Teacher, ada banyak magic moment, teacher. Macam mana you buat banyak magic moment, teacher?" So sweet, It's so sweet when they apply that. And then I asked them, okay, what was the magic moment for you? What was the magic? Because the magic moment is not one thing, it's different for different people. The thing with the magic moments is they're not they're not for me to say because I'm in it, you know. It's for somebody else, the director or Charlene, to say, yeah, that was a magic moment. And they can shift. So there are 2 points in Itself Tragedy where I'm extremely sad and I hit a very, very low sadness, a deep sadness. One is when I read the poem Beam Me Up, Scotty, about my sister-in-law who passed away of cancer. It starts, "Beam me up, Scotty. She was tired. She wanted to go upstairs. She'd had it with her cancer. And I looked after her for 6 months and more. She died in 1993 of a brain tumor. Her daughter was 4 years old when she died. This is in the UK. So 1993 is a long time ago. But when I read that story, I think about those days of looking after her and the child and everything, and then what has happened after that. And I did the show in December 23, and in March 23, a very, very good dear friend of mine passed away of cancer. She was diagnosed about a year after me, a year and a half after me. And when she was diagnosed, not breast cancer, leukemia, in Australia, we used to talk on the phone every week, and I was going, "No lah, Angie, I got my cancer first, so I'm going to go first, okay?" When she died in March, I just couldn't take it. I still can't take it. And towards the end, there is that poem, a poem I wrote, 24th March 2023. It starts off, "Today I lost my friend, lost to the sky, lost to the fire, lost to the wind, lost to the earth, lost to cancer." And yeah, so those 2 moments are deeply emotional. And I think they're difficult for me and they're difficult for the audience, but you have to decide whether it's magic or not. But I think that moment of dancing is quite special because I tell the story about the smell of the cologne and then I spray. So the room fills with the smell. And as Carmen was saying, how often do you go to theatre and you get that one more sense? So you get the visual, you get the sound, and you don't get the touch, but then she's dancing, so you feel the touch, and then you get the smell. And one of my friends after the show, she came up to me, Gimian, and she was sobbing. And many people were sobbing, but she was sobbing. She goes, "Oh my God, Marion, oh my God, that smell, that smell, that smell." I go, "Ha, ha, ha." So Christian he used to write a column, and he used to go into NST every Friday to hand in his thing. And she said, she was working in NST at that time. She says, as soon as he opened the glass door, we would get the smell and we would all get up and go, "Christian is here." And then we would all gather around him and he would chat with us and everything. And I felt, here's someone who remembers that smell because she goes back as long as me, Yeah, so I think that was not made to be a magic moment, but it turned out to be quite, yeah, well, this is what Charlene says, "Marion, you have to stop saying that you're not a writer." I'm like, okay. So I was a student in USM and he was a fly in, fly out lecturer. So before that, he had a column, right? Talking Drama by Utte. So he would come and watch shows, and I was in a show that was done by Muhammad Gaus Nasruddin. And he wrote a review that said, first year student, Marion D'Cruz, her prowess in dance, something, something. And then Gauss said to me, "Oh, you got fan club in KL," and Christian was like a god lah in KL. Everybody waited for his review. He either panned it or so to get that one line to say Marion D'Cruz's prowess. Her feet were not pointed all the time, but her prowess as a dancer, don't know what, don't know what. So like, whoa, Christian, okay. Then he came in as a fly in fly out lecturer teaching directing, and I was taking the course. So that's first sort of met him. Then when I graduated after my first degree, he was doing a play in KL, and he was looking for a solo dancer to be. So he contacted me. So I got involved in that production. Bukan Bunuh Diri, it was called. It was a monologue done by Khalid Saleh. And there was one section where this dance happens between the two of us, Muhammad Ali and me, where we're dancing his imagination. So, go for rehearsals and get to know Christian more. So that's, when the friendship started and then everything started. And then for the longest time, it was like yes, no, mau, tamau, mau, tamau. Christian says that, that I did the joget for like it was 8 or 9 years, and I think he was quite steady of what he wanted, but I was yes, no. So, in joget, how you go in and out and in and out. So it was mau, tamau, mau, tamau. For many reasons, lah, I was like, yeah, no, 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 cannot. Anyway, eventually, then okay, so that goes on, and then in the early so I went to New York and came back, and then there were Chin Sansui was around, Christian was around, and when I did my first solo show, which moved around the country, it was Christian and Sansui who produced the show for me, and we traveled and all that. Now, meanwhile, these two had this vision that slowly like developed that we should open something. So Malaysian stories were being told in Malay theatre by people like Said Alwi, Usman Awang, Nordin Hassan, Rahim Razali, Farida American. Farida was doing both. Malaysian stories in Bahasa. In English language theatre, we were still very tied to the Western canon of Shakespeare, Ibsen, Tennessee Williams. Lidra in Universiti Malaya was doing some local plays by Lloyd Fernando, Lee Ju Fo, things like that, Kedas, in the university. But in terms of bigger productions and at a more professional level, whatever that meant, there wasn't. So Christian and Sansui mainly thought, we need to open something that looks at Malaysian stories, Malaysian creativity in dance, in theatre, in music, in whatever. And they started talking to K.S. Maniam, who was writing plays about the state of the Indians in this country, and Piyadasa, Reza Piyadasa, who was doing visual arts and works about the state of the country. And I had already started this East-West fusion tradition, looking for contemporary dance for Malaysia. But really, it was the vision of Christian and Sansui. And then the five of us came together as the first sort of membership or cohort. And it was a collective. It was never, here's the artistic director. It was a collective right from the beginning of these five people, and formed by three or whatever. Some things will say formed by the five, but it doesn't matter. There were five in the first one, with the focus on Malaysian creativity. And the company was launched in 1984, so we're 41 this year. In 1984, with K.S. Maniam's play The Chord at the Old Town Hall. Now, it was very, very unusual to do an English language play by a Malaysian playwright talking about the state of the Indians in this country. But it was a huge success. It sold out Old Town Hall. I don't know how many shows we did, I can't remember. But, I think Muhammad Ghaus Nasruddin did the lighting, and, it was so, we started with that. And that's how it began. And then so at that time, we had creative writing as one pillar, theater, dance, because I was there, and visual arts, So then as people came and went, so we called it 5 Art Center because of theater, dance, visual arts, creative writing. And the 5th one was like anything else that we might want to do. And then it's moved, then we moved children's theater, then music came in at some point. So the 5 have organically changed. And right now, we don't really identify those 5 as such anymore because most of our work right now is very interdisciplinary. There's dance, there's movement, there's music, and there's multimedia, there's everything. And people have come and gone, have come into the company, have left the company. So starting with 5, right now we have 13 from 5 generations, from people in their 30s to the 70s. And it's still a collective. We have dance people, we have music people. Yeah, and we work with, a sort of a regular group of collaborators who are from visual arts and things like that. So the company has sort of morphed into different things, and we do a lot of different things now. We don't just do shows. We do workshops, we do archiving, we do forums, we do talks, we do training, we do advocacy. We're the Secretariat for Reformasi, which is run by June and a whole bunch of others. So it's quite diverse now. And I am the only founding member left in the company. Chin San Sui is still alive and he's still around and he's still doing work. But Christian, Pia, and Maniam have they're doing theatre in the sky, maybe, with Side and others. And we're 41, and sometimes I go, why are we still here? It's quite scary. The artistic relationship, the professional relationship was actually quite good because he was my severest critic and my greatest fan. He used to say to others that I had more courage than him, meaning, I would do things and not worry about is the audience going to get it or not. And sometimes he would say to me, you have to stop. You keep using non-dancers. You have to use dancers. Or, you've got to think about this piece because it's going to be very difficult for the audience when he would come in for rehearsal. And I would think about it. I wouldn't just say, like, and then I'd go, no lah, it's okay lah. I have to do it. And if the audience doesn't get it, it's okay lah, never mind, that kind of thing. So he used to say I had more courage than him. He made work, but he was also very interested that, the audience could access the work. Not that he made the work for an audience, but, and then I would go and look at the work, and then I'd go, you should do this, this, this. And then he would go, no, no, no. And then he would do it. He would steal a lot of ideas from me, a lot. So it really was a good, I produced a lot of his work. When he did work in Singapore, I was like his manager. And I remember one work, I read, it was 3 plays, and then I read the first play. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to read the other 2 because if I read the other 2, I won't produce this because, but I trust that you can make something of this. So the professional relationship was good. It was also, overall, the relationship was explosive. It was not like nice and calm and smooth. It was like, wah, wah, I remember once it was a tech rehearsal. But Christian, whether it's a full dress or a tech, he's making the actor do it over and over again, and the lighting people are getting frustrated, and we're running out of time. So I'm shouting from the back, Christian, this is a tech rehearsal. Like you cannot be doing this. And then he turns and he says, and you might have to edit this. He turns around and he says, "Fuck you, Marion," and I go, "Fuck you, Christian," and I walk out of the theater, and then we both, start laughing, and then he stops. So it was like that, lah. But in terms of the art, we fed each other. The personal relationship was a roller coaster. Right through the whatever 19 years of marriage and 8 years of Joget, a complete highs and complete lows. But if you ask me for memorable moments when he retired, we took a trip to Italy and we went to Venice and we were in the gondola, in the gondola, and the guy is with the gondola and he's, "Oh, solo mio," it's beautiful. And, Venice was wonderful. And I'm going, Christian, I'm going to live in Venice for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a gondola woman and I'm going to sing Malayalam songs, And he said, "Marion, that would be perfect. You just carry on and you stay here." And, so there are moments like that, which, yeah. But that Venice thing of, I still imagine me as a gondola woman in Venice singing Malayalam songs. Kanamayalamate, kanate, shapate, kiarangu mangu mailote. That'd be great, right? I think it would be really wonderful. But I only know 2 Malayalam songs, so I'd have to beef up my repertoire. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was not. It was far from perfect. It was far from smooth. It was volatile, passionate. Some of the passion, maybe the negative passion, maybe was unnecessary in hindsight and in retrospect. But it is what it is. Yeah. I think because I had done the Zoom read, because it had been a really long process. And I always take very long to make my shows. Like I'm not like rehearse 6 weeks and do a show. Cannot. It's like rehearse 1 year and then do a show. This was 3 years in the making. So by the time I sat in this room and read the stories, I already had quite a bit of distance. Was I just an actor performing? No. Was I really feeling all that pain and all that emotion? No. So I was sometimes, yeah, I'm just telling you a story, it's over. And at other times, no, this is, so it kind of moved that way. Some of it was difficult, yes. The Susan story was difficult. The Angie story was very difficult because it had just happened. The constipation thing is just a practical thing, because my brother had cancer, and because of morphine, he had impacted stools, and we had to go to hospital. And I watched the doctor extract these golf balls, hard as golf ball black. Then my mother used to have constipation, but because I had experienced it, I put on the rubber gloves and dish, no problem. So when it happened to me, I'm panicking because it's not just impacted stool, and you take the laxative and everything and still nothing is working. But I have this memory of these golf balls, these black golf balls, and I go, "No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. Jesus, no, I'm not going to go there." So rubber gloves, tish, tish. And it's weird what I'm going to say, but doing it on yourself is quite easy lah. I'd done it, with my mother already. And then you have to be very careful because you don't know what they're feeling. Your hand is good. But here you can adjust how you're feeling and everything. So was I trying to pull the cancer out of my body? No. At that point, I was really just trying to get the poo out. Really, really, really. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was, for me, it was very an important story because this is what is happening to people. And when you're in the toilet, sitting on the loo, thinking about what to do, who are you going to talk to? Are you going to run out and, ask my niece? I was staying with my niece, go, I'm constipated. Shall I put my hand? You're not going to do that, at that point. But once you've done it more than once, I did it more than once. Once you've done it a few times, then it's like, I did it and I'm still here and my bum is still intact and like nothing tragic has happened. Then you have the confidence to tell the story, and it's important to tell the story because somebody else who is going through cancer is going through this. Not everyone, everybody has a different cancer story, but it then you're like telling people it's okay lah, you're normal. you know that was not the purpose of telling the stories, but the purpose of sharing the stories was, I don't know what the purpose was. It was definitely not, I'm going to teach the world, how to deal with cancer. Definitely not. It was like, hey, this is my story. Take what works or whatever. Somebody said to me after the show, do you feel better now that you have uh, got it out of your body? Like therapy. Uh, I I don't think it was therapy for me. I think it was good for me to tell the stories and to share it with an audience, but I don't think it was. So it's always good to get it out. It's like when you talk to someone and you have a deep dark problem and you share it with someone, you get it out of your system, you get it out of your mind and your body. It's always good. This time, I got it out of my mind and my body to like 300 people or 200 people or whatever it is. So yeah, of course. But is it therapy so then I get rid of my PTSD and I'm all good? No, I'm still one breast missing. I'm still taking medication. You saw me pop a tablet this morning. That was the cancer medication that I have to take after breakfast every morning. I'm still fearful. I'm still vulnerable. I still recognize my change of personality. That old fearless Marion is gone. But that's also age. It's not just the cancer, but it's the cancer and then COVID and then age. But at the same time, I'm working part-time, I'm living my life, I'm traveling. I'm not like hiding under a bed. So it's as good as it gets. I'm better than most. I'm blessed. Like I say in that piece, my family and an army of friends, and I still have that. I still have that. They've not let me go. Do the work, tell your stories. Do not be afraid to tell your story, to share your story, whatever it is. Be honest, because art is about truth. Art is about finding ways to give that truth, whether it's questioning truth, whether it's historical, whether it's fiction, whether it's personal. It's about giving audiences some kind of experience that they might not get through film or TV or TikTok or social media. That visceral experience of being in a space, in a studio with people. Take time to do the work. So we're a quick fix society right now. So some practitioners, not just young ones, young, old, everything, you know, don't have the time and the luxury and to work on something for 3 years or 6 months or something. You've got 6 weeks because you want to work on something for 1 year. You want your dancers to come in for rehearsals for 1 year. You got to pay them. So it is a different world. When I was making work, we paid people very little. And I had a dance group. So the dance group met twice a week anyway, whether we were doing a show or not. So we were constantly in rehearsal. There are some companies like that now, but usually it's, oh, here's a project. I want to do this project. It's 3 months work, da, da. So sometimes people don't take enough time to dig deep into the work, to ask the hard questions, and then to make the work really work. So I would encourage people, with the limitations of time and money and space and everything, to do the research and just dig deep into the work that you're presenting. And dig deep does not necessarily mean 1 year. You can dig deep in 1 month. But I guess my main thing would be just put the work out there. Put the stuff out there. Good, bad, ugly. Put it out there with all the work and all the honesty every day. I wake up. I've got problems with my knees, especially my left knee. I've got aches and pains all over, which I never had before. I had triggered thumbs because of side effects of medication. It's all happening. It's all happening. I've got pins and needles sensation under my feet all the time, which is why I wear socks and shoes all the time. That somehow or other helps. Um, uh, so it's all happening. I am 71, so I'm quite happy if I don't make another piece of art in ever. I've made more than I ever set out to do. So if I don't do, that's fine with me. If I don't physically dance anymore, that's fine too, because I'm always dancing in my head all the time. So yes, of course, the body limits me from even doing that little 2-minute thing. I had to be very careful how I took turns, because this knee is quite a trick knee. Wear the knee guard and yeah, be careful. So in terms of my work and my career and my dancing as a performer, I'm fine. I've done so much, and in terms of my life, I don't want these aches and pains and trigger thumbs and everything. And I think the most stark thing, and that is my dancer's body will never forget, is when I have no clothes on and I walk past the mirror and I look and I will, whoa, that missing breast, that mutilated body is not nice. And this, because my kinesthetic memory, my muscle memory is so sharp, this dancer's body will never let that go, will never forget. And in the same breath, because of that kinesthetic memory, right now, this minute, I can do my most favorite dance, which is Terinai, without any rehearsal. I can do the whole dance for you. It's a dance from Perlis called Terinai. The kinesthetic memory just locks in. Yes, yes, my dancer's legs. When I wear a dress, people go, "Oh my God, look at those legs." I go, "Yeah, I've got dancer's legs." Okay, in my career and in my work as an artist and in my work as an educator, and in my work as a caregiver, because I've spent many years as a caregiver as well. At one point, I think I will stop all this art and just go into caregiving, because I looked after my sister-in-law and then my brother and then my mother and then my husband. Okay, um, the especially in my career as a dancer and an educator, let's say, there are no regrets really. I have students who come up to me still and say, "You changed my life," and so on and so forth, and send me emails, and it's great. I'm a good teacher, I know that. and I've made, as I said, I've made so much art. Um, when I look back at my body of work, maybe 5 pieces were like really brilliant, and then the rest is pretty mediocre. And then there's like maybe 20 pieces or more that are really bad. I'm very aware of that, and I'm really fine to go. Hey, I got 5 good pieces. Come on, that's fine. That's good enough. 10% of my work is um, so no regrets. But in my personal life, I have regrets. Now they're not big, huge, dramatic regrets. But they're regrets like, oh, I could have handled that better. I could have been kinder as a caregiver, looking after my mom, especially. I shouted at her a lot. Um, I could have been kinder. I could have been more understanding in personal relationships, especially with my, the people I looked after, lah, my mother, my brother, my husband. My sister-in-law was quite good because she was a saint as a patient. So, there was nothing to get upset about there. Yeah, so those kinds of regrets, I do think about them, go, yeah, I could have handled it better. But I also know that at that time I did my best. So yeah, I mean, I admire people when you ask them any regrets, they go, no, none whatsoever. I go, wow, nice, huh, to be like that. I cannot be honest in my personal life. Yes. Human. Yeah, I think so. And I think it's okay lah to admit it and go, yeah, I got regrets. Sure, I got regrets. Dancer, choreographer, educator, producer, caregiver, loyal friend, crazy about family, Catholic. Itulah. Itu dia. In the early days when I was doing contemporary dance, the big challenge was, what is contemporary dance? And I worked with non-dancers. So people used to look at it and go, is this dance? So getting an audience in for contemporary dance was a big challenge in the early days. Big challenge. Theatre not so, because Christian was already a name, Sansvi was already a name, they had a following. Who was Marion D'Cruz and what is she doing? Why are women coming out of an urn, for God's sake, So an audience for contemporary dance was a big challenge. It's better now, but it's still not, if you have a contemporary dance show and you get 1,000 people in, it's already glory, hallelujah. Okay, so that was one. It's much better now, but still a challenge, I think. Secondly, funding is always a challenge. It has been, we're 41. In the early days also, we used to do an entire show for 4,000 ringgit. Now a small show is 40,000 ringgit. And, if you want to pay people, well, yeah. So, so funding ongoing for everyone in the arts. But having said that, it is much, much better now. We have much more access to funding, international funding, government funding. But the other thing, the third one, particularly for Five Arts, is the various challenges we've had with shows being banned, shows being closed down, a bomb scare, permit not given, interview with special branch, Yeah, I mean, I think if you go, and it's not just us, Instant Cafe has had it, Actor Studio has had it, we have had it. But I think if you list out the number of things we've faced over the years, it's quite historic. I think we're the only theatre company who would go down in the history of theatre in this country who had a bomb scare.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So we were doing a children's theatre production of Rama and Sita, Generasi Baru, directed by Janet Pillay in 1996, I think. And something came out in the papers about the story of Rama and Sita and the photo of these two young, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds playing Rama and Sita. and she was wearing these pants, these kind of palazzo-like pants, and a top that was sleeveless and a bit short, and she's like dancing, so you can see a bit of her midriff. So it came out, and then there was a letter to the papers by the Hindu Sangam saying, you know, they've taken our story of Rama, who is our god, and they've done this, and this needs to be, it's very bad, and to be banned, and so on and so forth. And so then, okay, so that came up. So the Sun published that letter. Then I think they called the ministry, because the ministry was also, we were performing in experimental theatre of what is now Aswara, but that time was Complex Budaya Negara. So the ministry was also supporting us, one of our, not funders in terms of money, but in terms of space and everything. So then there was a meeting. They called it a meeting between the Hindu Sangam and us. And we said, you know, we're not, you know, we're not using the religious side. We're just telling the story of Rama and Sita. And in Malaysia also, we have the Rama and Sita. It's called the Hikayat Sri Rama, which we do in Wayang Kulit, all that. But, you know, they're not very happy, of course. And I said, you know, I've done things with Jesus. I've done, you know, like Maria Zaitun, which is about, you know, at the end, it's Jesus who comes down, da 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 da. Then the person there said, you know, I have my guys ready to march. They're waiting in Batu Caves, ready to march, and so on. So it was a bit threatening. But okay. But Sufyan Mukri, who was the head of KBN at that time, said, no, we're going to carry on with this. Okay. So we carry on with the show. One morning, the phone rings. That time, landline. I had a handphone already, but it was the landline that rang. I picked up the phone quite early in the morning. And this female voice says, next time you want to do something, why don't you do the Easter Bunny? And hangs up. I thought it was quite a good threat, actually, because she had done her research. She had found out that I was a Catholic and Easter meant something to me. Maybe not the Easter Bunny, but never mind. So quite a good dig. I thought it was quite clever. But after that, I used to wear a hat, pull it down a bit and drive around, you know, a bit, not really scared lah, but you know, like, okay, somebody knows my landline number, which means then they know where I live, and no. Yeah, the last show. One show, these guys came in and threw some beer cans and beer bottles into the lobby. Yeah. Okay, last show, we start the show, and then, so it's a Sunday afternoon show. The KBN office is upstairs. We are down in the theatre. And then the office comes down and says, the office has got a call to say there's a bomb in the theatre. Now, in the theatre, we had 300 audience and 25 kids on stage, or plus, not 25, whatever. So I'm the producer, and I'm going, okay, there's definitely no bomb. But how can I just let 300 kids okay. So we make the stage manager make an announcement. So before that, after the threats and the bottles, we already had made a police report. So we had a number like, when anything happens, call us, and also police were sort of looking after us. We made an announcement, due to technical problems, we have to just temporarily stop the show. We took everybody outside. There was like an amphitheater, and the performers started playing theater games, like, you know, Actor Olympics out there. Then we called the police. Then we had to wait for the bomb squad. Then the bomb squad came and they checked the theater. There was no bomb. But of course, the whole thing took about an hour or more. So some of the audience waited, but I remember a convent clang or something. Their bus had to take them, so they had to go back. Eventually, we got everybody back in and we finished the show. And Sufyan Mukri said to me, it's okay, Marion. You will be the first theatre company that goes down to have a bomb scare. I'm like, I don't want to go down in history for that. Her absurd thing, no. Called up by special branch for interview, yes. Gone up to DBKL, you know, because they didn't give us a license to do vagina monologues the second time around, yes. But arrested, no. No. Hopefully, never. I don't want to say not yet, but No, I'm just going to say no, we have not been arrested and we will not be arrested. You know, the thing with this country is you never know which way it's going. So sometimes we go through a very liberal phase and oh, everything's fine. Then bang, mentega terbang. You know, it just. And as Farida said in her interview, it's not the BKL or the censorship people. It's that one person in the public who decides that no, this is wrong, and then makes a complaint. And then the powers that be feel they have to act on it because if they don't, you know, there'll be a revolution or something, you know. So the laws are like quite, yes, there are laws that you know, what you can do and what you can't do, but then some of it is it's so open to interpretation. Like Mentega Terbang, it's your interpretation. You feel that this particular scene, one scene, is against Islam, but it's for most people it's not. It's beautiful. So and yeah, now they're battling away in court, and that appeal was rejected completely just 2 weeks ago. So I think right now we're in a tighter phase of censorship. And also film, theater is a bit easier. We're kind of under the radar, not under the radar, but you know, it's like 400 people, 500 people, it's not. But film has a really wide reach. Plus, if you're on YouTube and all, you're reaching thousands, millions. So the censorship on film, I think, is what is, you know, yes, streetcar and so many cases. Instant Cafe, Baltimore Walls, Vagina Monologues and 1984. After the thing, we were called up again because there was something written, and then we were called up about it. No, you see, it ran. Yeah, so permit and everything, and it ran. Then the article came out in the Far Eastern Economic Review, I think. And it had a line that something like, oh, special branch must have been sleeping to have let this through. Something like that. So they called us. But they called us up and they just interviewed and asked a lot of questions. And what did we do? And why did we do it? And the big question was, who is behind this? Who is behind this? You know, and we're like, nobody. You know, so the implication was there's a political party making us do this, or there's somebody making us do this. And we're going, no, there's a playwright wrote the play, then the director wanted to do this play, and then we produced the play. It's quite a simple thing. There's no, yeah. And then special branch officers also, they're just doing their job lah sometimes. So for uh, election day also, we had a lot of problems. Huzzair's election day, and had to go and have meetings and everything. And then the DBK people came every day for the show to see. So you think they want to come every night for 10 shows, even though they're different offices. They have families. They just want to go home and eat and watch TV and sleep. But they have to, you know, so it's the system that's evil. It's not these individuals. And then the system gives power to individuals who then, you know, yeah. So it's exactly the one person. Vagina Monologues also, it was one person who never saw the play. We did one run, and then again it was, I think he heard about it or was written in the papers from Jabatan Agama Kedah, calls DBK or something and says, how could you have let this play go? So when we applied for a rerun, we were called up. So it's like that, like everything has a long, complicated story, but